Hello, gorgeous. Welcome to HG Radio, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration. Here is your co-founder and host, Kim Becker.
Hello, gorgeous, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and this is Hello, Gorgeous, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration on Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. This episode is brought to you by Amplified Marketing Group. They specialize in affordable mobile solutions that will get you noticed and help you retain customers. Check them out at www.amplified.marketing. Hello, my friends. I wanted to do an episode today on an experience that I never thought that I would have, but I am in this position now. I never thought I would be here, but I'd like to talk to you today about parenting solo. 3 years ago, I became a widow with a 15-year-old son, and I have learned a lot. So I thought that this would be a great episode to share with you the 3 things that I have found that have helped me be a successful solo parent. We deal with a lot of women that are battling cancer. Many women are unsure of what their fate will be. Their loved ones that are taking care of them, a spouse, may not know what their fate, the loved one that was diagnosed with cancer, what their fate will be. And so it's not easy, but it can be done. And I feel like my son and I have weathered the storm and have journeyed through this quite well. So I wanted to share a little bit of my story and some of the things that we've done to what I feel to be a successful solo parent. So years ago, somebody gave me a piece of advice, and I still think about it to this day. Mike and I may have been engaged. So actually last week we would have celebrated 27 years of marriage. So this, I bet I may have gotten this advice 30 years ago, but I've never, ever, ever forgotten it. And somebody told me that your child is an open book when they are born, and you're the one that fills the pages. Now I want you to really think about that. What are you filling your child's pages with? How do you handle unexpected surprises like the loss of a job or a cancer diagnosis or the loss of a parent? If you're caring for an elderly parent, did you ever sit back and think about you caring for an elderly parent and what your children are seeing in the care that you give your parent, the example that you're setting for them, with the hopes that that's how they will care for you? Your child is an open book, and you are filling those pages. Really think about that and think about how you're filling those pages, because I guarantee you that your children are watching you. They are watching you like a hawk. And what better example for them than you? And not only that, the way that you parent them is how they're going to parent their children. So that's the one thing I think I miss about being having a co-parent, is that Mike and I were kind of yin and yang. I was the one that was very excitable. I'm very passionate. I get very loud. I don't mean to yell sometimes, but I do. And Mike was the one that was very calm. And his was, now just wait a minute. Let's think about this. Let's talk about this. His was never a reaction. He would make sure that he took pointed actions. And so when I don't have that co-parent now, I have to really play both roles of those. And so I've had to make sure that, and I want my son to be more like Mike. I want him to be able to step back. I don't want him to react. I want him to make sure that he really thinks through, here we are in the middle of high school years, and, you're faced with different things. And I don't want him to get upset and emotional, but yet I don't want to tamp down his passion, which he's gotten from me. So I miss that co-parent where he would get both yin and yang. He would get the passion from me, but he would get the sensibility from Mike. And so I've had to kind of take that whole thing on. But you can, and it's certainly something that can be done. And I think that just having the awareness of it, what traits do you want your child to have of yours? What traits do you do you want your child to have of your co-parent, who, whether they live with you or not live with you, or whether they're deceased? so that you can make sure that you accentuate all those positive ones and then tamp down some of the other ones. So, funny story that I need to share with you is that when Mike and I got married, we didn't want to have children. We had several discussions at great lengths that we decided that we didn't want to have kids. And part of that reason was we didn't know anybody that had children that were happy. Everybody that we knew that had kids seemed miserable. They were yelling at their kids all the time. You want to go to the Target toy aisle around Christmas time. If you want a good form of birth control, just stand there and watch how the parents talk to their children or the way that they try and navigate them back. We did not want children, which we are Catholic. And so that caused a little bit of a problem. So we were at the altar and you sign all of the paperwork for the church and for the legal documents actually the night before. So we were signing everything. And for the church, you had to say that you wanted children. And so I'm standing at the altar of the church. I'm not going to lie. So the priest said to us, "Are you going to have children?" And Mike and I looked at each other and we told the priest no. And he said, "You're not going to have children." And we said, "No, we don't want to have kids." And he asked us why. And we told him we didn't know anybody that had kids that was happy. Everybody that had children looked miserable. And he said to us, "You're never going to have children." And I said, "Well, never is a really long time. I wouldn't say never." And the priest said, "Okay, well, we're going to mark this one yes." And I am so grateful that I was a different person at 35 when I had my son than I was at 26 when I got married. Because our son, is the absolute greatest gift that we ever received. He is an incredible individual, and my greatest accomplishment of all of the things I've spoken on big public stages. I'm I'm an award-winning author. We've had an amazing national nonprofit for the last 14 years. But the most proud accomplishment that I have is being the mom to my son. He is absolutely an incredible individual. So Mike and I decided then, we were married for 9 years. And so we started a business and we really wanted to be accomplished. And I was one of those people that I wanted to wait to have kids until I was stable, until I had X amount of money in the bank, I was one of those people. And I remember having salon clients come in and say to me, "Look, if you're going to wait until you have enough money to have a child, you will never have a child because you'll never have enough money. There's just no way. There are things that are going to come up. There's no way that you can be prepared for that. You will never have enough money." And finally we were like, okay. So we were married for 9 years. And quite frankly, then we didn't know if we could have children. At that point in time, Mike was diagnosed with a disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis about 3 years after we got married. So we had struggled with that. He had had some really high fevers, like 104, 105. So we weren't even sure that having children were possible at this point in time. So we decided that we were going to give it a try and that we wanted to attempt to get pregnant. So we had tried for a couple of months without success. And we'd owned a salon at the time. We'd had like 7 stylists. And one of our top stylists came to us and said that she was pregnant. And she wasn't married at the time. And so it took us a little aback. It was kind of a surprise to us and to her. And we talked about it and we said, well, there's no way that we can have her out of the salon being our top stylist and me out of the salon being the topist, to the most popular stylist, the most busy stylist, and then have the second busy stylist. We just thought there's no way that our business could handle that. So we decided that we were going to wait until after she got back from maternity leave for us to attempt to, start trying to get pregnant again. And during our time of not trying to get pregnant, we got pregnant. And so it's interesting how that happens. When you're not looking, that's when it happens. When you're not trying, that's when it happens. And so we got pregnant. We found out we were pregnant in October on Sweetest Day. And we told our family at Thanksgiving that we were pregnant. And that's a whole long story for another episode. But our son was born in June, and he was absolutely positively the greatest gift that we could ever ask for. He was just an amazing child and a great baby. And we knew we only wanted to have one. Part of the reason was because he was so good. We figured that if we had a second child, it would be devil spawn. And we didn't want to do that to ourselves. We thought, boy, we're just going to take this amazing blessing of this one awesome child and we're just going to sit tight right here. We're not going to move. We're just going to stay there. And I just remember being in the car and Mike and I being in the front seat, and Seth's car seat would be in the back seat. And he could never just get, when we were together, he could never just get one of our attentions. He had to get both of our attentions. So he would always say, Mom, and I'd say yes. And then he would say, Dad, and Mike would say yes. And then he would tell us whatever it was that he wanted to tell us. But I remember one day looking at Michael and saying, what did we ever do without the endless banter coming from that back seat? Like for 9 years, it was just the two of us. It was two of us in the house. It was two of us at the business. It was the two of us. And we got to go and do and see and travel. And I have no regrets. I am a better parent because I'm a little bit of an older parent. I have no regrets about that. But I certainly would have not wanted to miss this journey of being a mom. And I'm grateful. And I was the mom that worked. So when Seth was about 14 months old and Mike lost his job. He worked for a very big superstore, and they had a big downsizing, and they let 1,900 managers go in one day. And Mike happened to be a product of that downsizing. And so we decided that it was going to be Mike who stayed home and that he was Mr. Mom. And we had the salon. He was going to help me with the salon. At this point in time, we had moved. Our location was 3,000 square feet. I think we had 17 stylists, a massage therapist, a receptionist. So he was going to help me with the salon, but his primary role would be Seth's dad and Seth's caregiver. And he would take care of the house and he would do all of that. And then I would work in the salon. I worked a lot of long days. But I found for me, I was a better mom because I worked. And my time with Seth was more quality than quantity. And so it doesn't necessarily work for for everybody. But for me, I was a really good mom in that aspect. And Seth and I had our routine. So he and Mike would spend all day together. And then when I got home, it was my job to get Seth in his PJs, and we'd sit down either in bed and we'd snuggle, or we'd sit downstairs and he and I would read a book together and I would put him to bed. And that was our nightly routine. And that worked for us. And I was so grateful that I had that. I was grateful that we were able to have that relationship and that we were in a position that Mike could stay home and be that. Now, looking back on that, I think about all of those times and those, a little less than 15 years that Mike had with Seth. And I tell Seth all the time now, you know what? We had a concentrated dose of your dad, because there are many kids that their dads work 9 to 5 and they only see them after 5 o'clock and on the weekends, where we had a very, very, very concentrated dose of Mike. We were able to go, the three of us just went together all the time. When we decided only to have one child, we did that on purpose. Mike and I loved spending time together. I always said the nucleus of the family is the marriage. And granted, our marriage wasn't perfect by any means. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's marriage is perfect, but we had a really, really, really good marriage. And we loved when our arguments occurred in our marriage when we didn't spend enough time together. Most people, like when they spend too much time together, that's when they argue. That wasn't us. When we spent not enough time together, that seems like when our arguments occurred. So we loved being together. And so the fact that Mike was free from a 9 to 5 job and I had some flexibility because of being the owner for the business. So when we would travel or go places for Hello Gorgeous, the three of us just went together as a unit. And so I'm so grateful to have had all of that time together. And as I said, I told Mike all the time, I said, told Seth all the time that we had a very concentrated dose of his dad. And Mike and Seth were able to make some pretty incredible memories too. They had their routine down where Mike would make Seth, breakfast in the morning, and then they would have lunch. And right after lunch, they would have a pillow fight. And Seth always knew that it was time for a pillow fight because he would go and grab the pillow off the couch and toddle into the kitchen where Mike was cleaning up after lunch. And he would just be dragging a pillow with him to let his dad know that he had not forgotten that it was pillow fight time. So they really had some great memories, and we're so grateful for all that time together, and that it's molded Seth into the man that he is today. And there's so many memories that I'm grateful for, some of the trips and all of the holidays, but one memory